Hey y'all, it's Dan from danwagner.co with a quick walkthrough of the create GUID function with some notes on the scriptlet typelib object, as well as some details on using optional parameters inside a VBA function. So to get started, almost all of the work is going to be done by this scriptlet typelib object, and it's interesting in that you can't early bind this object. I tried and tried and tried. It resulted in more errors than I could tell you about. Historically, I've never run into an object like this. Like, I've always been able to early bind stuff, but in researching, and you can go verify this at this link, it looks like that this object just needs to be late bound in order to work correctly. There's a lot more notes about how early binding and late binding differ from one another inside the linked article, so check it out there. The long and the short of it is that you just need to create the object this way. So when you get this scriptlet typelib object, you want to call the GUID method on it. And interestingly, you wind up with these null terminated characters at the end, right? And so we want to go ahead and get rid of those. And that's what happens here, where we assign the GUID method results minus the last two characters to this string variable, string GUID. And the rest of the function revolves around the optional parameters that we passed in. So include hyphens, which is a Boolean variable that's defaulted to true, and include braces, which is a Boolean variable that defaults to false. So assuming your user doesn't change this function at all, the user just calls create GUID with no inputs, it'll work just fine. In that case, you'll have not true, which is going to result in false, right? So this string GUID replace action right here won't actually take place because it'll be skipped, right? Because the default value, again, is true. And then the include braces optional variable is defaulted to false. So not false is true, right? And so in that case, the string replace action that happens here, where we get rid of these curly brackets, is going to be evaluated. And so without changing those default optional parameters, you're going to wind up with a GUID that has hyphens but no curly braces. So let's do a quick demo of how the function actually works. And I'm going to uncomment this to show you the weird two characters that end up at the end, that null termination. So up here is my test create GUID function. Excuse me, my test create GUID subroutine. We have GUID as a string, and here we're going to call it, and we're going to look at the results. So you can see I stopped here. I'm going to print the results of object.GUID. And so you can see you wind up with these nonsense characters on the end, and that's why when we assign string GUID, we're chopping the last two characters off. And this is a pattern that you'll see lots of places, right? This left of the full string with the length of the string minus 2, in case you don't know exactly how long the string is going to be. This is a great way to get rid of the last 2, the last 5, the last 50 characters on something, right? Just change this number to be whatever you need it to. So let's go ahead, clear this out, and show the results of each way to call create GUID. So the first example is just going to be the default, right? The result we're going to get does not have curly braces, but it is going to have hyphens. The next way to call it is by setting include hyphens to false, because again, it's defaulted to true. And in that case, we're going to wind up with a GUID with no hyphens and no curly braces, again, because braces is defaulted to false as well. And finally, we can call it with include braces set to true, which is going to leave the braces in place. And I guess if we really wanted to, we could also test create GUID where we set include hyphens to false, and we also set include braces to true. And in that case, we're going to get something that is wrapped up like this inside the curly braces, but without the hyphens. And so we'll demo that one as well. So we click play. Oops, I'm going to make sure I get rid of these lines, right? Because these were just a demo for the tutorial. And I'm going to stop, clear those out, and let's start again. Okay, so this first one is going to look like this. No curly braces, but with hyphens, which is great because, again, we didn't change any of the defaults, right? So this replace statement was not executed, so the hyphens stay in place, and the curly braces, however, are replaced. The next version has include hyphens set to false, so we're going to wind up with something similar to this, just without the hyphens. Awesome, no hyphens, and again, we didn't change the braces default, so the braces are removed as expected. This next version has us leaving braces to true, so in this one, we're going to get braces and hyphens, which is great. Again, when we look at this, right, we've set include braces to be the opposite of what the default value is, so those braces get left in place. And finally, we call it with the inverse of both of the defaults. Include hyphens is set to false, and include braces is set to true. So we're going to wind up with something that looks like this, right? Wrapped in curly braces, but without the hyphens. And sweet, that is what we wind up with. So that's how the create GUID function works in a nutshell. If you have any questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to reach out. And if you'd like to get more of these tutorials delivered straight to your inbox, go ahead and sign up for my weekly newsletter at danwagner.co. Thanks so much.